I'm trying to get the stream to work.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for those who are coming from different places around the world. Okay, this is your chairman of the UCSSC welcoming you in the 2026, and we are thankful for the consistent attendees. We would like to persuade most of the coaches to upgrade themselves for the latest of coaching uh, knowledge that you can get coming from the UCSSC. The speakers coming from different countries, most of them are actually national coaches. We would like to ask you to at least spend about 1 hour to attend the UCSSC Sports Coaching Education. Thank you.
Today's presentation is going to come from the state of Virginia and Andrew Scheaff. He is a presenter that's shared his wisdom with us in the past, and we're going to hear from him in about 15 or 16 minutes. We'll be talking about the key skills for fast swimming, and I've started the stream already. So people can come on over to WASU meeting room, which is a meeting, meetn.com/WASU. We're going to just play a little bit of background information until then. If you know Matt, or if you know Coach Kate, or if you know Coach Ray, I'd love to hear a testimonial for a video tribute that I'm working on in the weeks to come. Please sound off. I would love to get this video with your information. You can always see our past information clicking the button at the bottom, the bygone seminars course. Whoops. We better turn off the waiting room. The waiting room is off. People can come right in. Here's a nice little video public service announcement. I'm going to get a few things loaded up. We'll take a minute to stream in though.
Hi, I'm Michael Phelps, and as you know, I love to swim. Swimming is a life-saving skill, but it's important to be careful around water, even if you're a great swimmer. Never swim alone and never hold your breath for an extended amount of time. Doing so can cause you to faint. It's what happened to my friend Chandler.
I was actually pronounced dead in shallow water after taking an underwater swim challenge in a pool. Vacationing with my family, it was my competitive self that hyperventilated so I could hold my breath more easily.
But Chandler never emerged from underwater. When they finally realized something was very wrong, he was already gone. If not for the two doctors who happened to be by the pool, he would be.
Those doctors never stopped CPR, and after 5 minutes, they got a heartbeat and a pulse. My family and wife had to experience this horror for no good reason. Most shallow water blackout victims don't make it. Me being here is a miracle.
Shallow water blackout is 94% lethal and 100% preventable. So please don't hold your breath for extended amounts of time.
If it happened to me, it could happen to anyone.
Good reminder from Michael and his friend. We're getting ready to hear from Andrew, who will be presenting about key swimming skills. Seminar will start in about 10 minutes. And there are some other very good seminars in the past that people should be watching. Do you know that guy? Sonder. He had a wonderful presentation about age group in swimming. That is live now at wasu.org. Today, it's
We're gonna start in about 7 minutes. 6 minutes. Mic test. Mic test. Mic test.
You're on.
Mic test. Mic test. Mic. Okay. There are regional competitions today, and you will be expecting that. That is why I decided to cancel most of the. It starts today, and that will be on the regions. Five minutes we start.
Hey, I'd love to know where everybody's coming from. If you could type into the chat box your hometown, that'd be fun. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. Have you been to any big meets lately?
I was at the Atlantic 10 Championships. That would be about as big as it gets.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Hi, Coach.
Hey, Dennis, how are you?
Yeah, I just arrived for a 22 hours trip.
Oh, wow. That
22
sounds fun.
hours. Wow. And wow, I my bus engine collapsed. Okay, so we were in the middle of the road at midnight this morning. God, in the middle of the road waiting for a rescue.
Yeah, I've been there. That's no
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. This is the second time I experienced that. Oh gosh. Uh, Before it was in Bicol
Hmm.
region. Yeah, it's a middle of the night also. God. And now I have several teams in the north that I'm giving clinics. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and after that I will be going to Bacolod for clinics also.
Got it.
About uh, three clinics here in what's this in the north. Then Bacolod about four clinics.
They're
Yeah.
clinics for swimmers, Dennis?
Yeah, for swimmers, no, for swimmers and coaches.
Okay.
Those who wanted to implement the latest on thresholds and the program for the middle distance. Okay, sprinters. Yeah, I'm giving it for them. Normally it's about 3 days. Um, Day one will be sprinters program. Day two is middle distance program. Then day three is a distance program, or reverse. I can make it reverse. So it's gonna be 2 sessions of distance, 2 sessions of middle distance, and 2 sessions of um, the sprints. It incorporates the corrections, especially in the morning.
Hey, let me ask a selfish question. Um, Coach Andrew, do you know any of
Yep.
the 3 new Hall of Fame people?
Yeah, I know them.
I wonder if I could get a little testimonial or a shout out for them. But so I have to build a video, a tribute
Uh,
video for the Hall of Fame.
yeah, yeah. Just send me an email.
Well, you could do it right now, even if you wanted to.
I'd rather
Okay,
prepare.
I'll
I'd
do
rather
that.
not just make
No
something up
worries.
that's gonna be
Yep.
live forever.
Okay.
Okay, guys, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. We would like to welcome you on another session of the UCSSC World Coaching Education. Okay, we are collaborating with about 70 organizations and universities. We would like to welcome those who are actually new here in our session. My co-host today is actually Coach Mark Rauterkus of USA, a water polo coach and a swim coach. We would like to welcome, okay, a master of physiology, okay, and many times giving us free of his time on giving his knowledge and with regards to stroke corrections most often. Now we're doing a new topic for him, which is techniques, stroke techniques. Okay, we would like to welcome our speaker for today from USA, Coach Andrew Scheaff. How do you pronounce it? Chef?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like Scheaff, like
Yeah.
chief with an S.
Okay. Um, we would like to give the floor now to Coach Andrew Schiff. Coach, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dennis. So, Mark, did that just switch the slides?
Yes, you look good.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. Okay, great. So thanks for having me, everybody. Thanks for being here. And hopefully this will be helpful for everyone. So today we're going to talk about the key skills for fast swimming. And rather than going through every single little detail, we're going to focus on the underlying principles. So we're going to do that for all 4 strokes as well as underwater kicking. And we're going to try to keep it as simple, as accurate, and as practical as possible. And so the goal is to give you a clear picture of what really actually matters from a skill standpoint for speed so that you're not overwhelmed by the details. Further, it also will give you a framework for when you hear other information, you can have a basic understanding, a basic framework for deciding whether that whether another coach's suggestion or whether something you read or something you see, whether that makes sense in terms of the overall approach to what really matters for skill. And so everything I cover is going to directly apply to the swimmers that you coach, and that's especially true of those who are still building their basic skill sets, and so that they can start their swimming career in a place that allows them to learn the most effective skills, the skills that matter most, and then ultimately continue to develop those skills over time. So, why skills matter? So, if you want your swimmers to go fast, they need to change their skills. skilled swimmers are fast swimmers, and there's really no way around it. And so if you're trying to apply more effort, you're just trying to train ineffective or inefficient skills, they can swimmers will go faster if they become fitter, but there's a very hard ceiling on how fast they will swim if they're not particularly skilled. So the better their skills are, the higher their potential to swim fast, and then any training that you do do is going to be that much more effective. And there's really again, there's no way around that. And so there's a lot of information, especially in the digital and the internet age. There's a lot of information available. There are a lot of opinions out there, and it can be overwhelming and it can be confusing as to what makes sense, especially when two seemingly respectful or respected people are saying two things that seem to be very, very different from each other. And so, one, how can you understand which is maybe true, or maybe even how can both be true at the same time? The differences just depend on context. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the simple principles that are true, and they're inarguably true. And then from there, it becomes easier to kind of interpret and understand all the information that's coming at you. And so again, these are the things that are foundational, that they're fundamental, and it's not so much about the details, it's about what really matters, what's really true. And so again, rather than focusing on the specific positions that you might want to put the arm in, we're going to focus on the principles that allow you to help swimmers find the positions that are most effective for them. Because across different individuals, even at the very elite level, you're going to see a slightly different visual representation of these same principles. So the point here is to give you a small set of simple ideas that you can use to help understand which skills are actually worth improving. Okay, so for speed, in all three strokes and underwater kicking, there are three big skills that swimmers need to learn. So first, they need to learn how to minimize resistance. So that means how little drag they can go, or how little drag they create as they go through the water. And so using an analogy that's outside of swimming, if you look at a race car, an F1 car, they're extremely aerodynamic. And then if you look at, maybe the bus that Dennis was talking about that he was riding on last night or this morning, they may both have very big engines, but because the Formula One car is really high aerodynamic, and in water it would be hydrodynamic, and the bus is not, that F1 car is going to drive much, much, much faster. And so the less drag that swimmers can create, the less resistance that they can create as they move through the water, the faster they're going to go. And another way to think about that is they need to be as streamlined at every instant as they move through the water. And again, the less drag they create, the faster they're going to swim. Second, they need to create as much propulsion as possible. So going back to the car analogy, the bigger the engine is, the faster the car is going to go. The bigger the engine is, the more propulsion swimmers can create with their arms, with their legs, the faster they are going to swim. So another major skill set is the ability to create as much propulsion as possible. And in all strokes and in underwater kicking, those two things are true. Swimmers have to minimize the resistance they create. They have to maximize the propulsion they create. And then lastly, they have to get the timing right. And so the ability to minimize resistance and maximize propulsion at the same time comes down to effective timing of the limbs, the arms to the legs, and then also the limbs to the body. So in breaststroke and butterfly, there's up and down motion. In freestyle and backstroke, there's side to side motion. And swimmers have to time the limbs to those skills or to those body motions in order to go as fast as possible. So every skill that any coach has ever talked about is going to be a representation of either minimizing resistance, creating more propulsion, or optimizing timing. And so if a coach is talking about a swimmer's head position, well, that's an issue with minimizing resistance. Their head's out of line, they're going to create more drag. And so if a coach is talking about their hand position or dropping their elbow or something like that, those are all representations of creating or of the ability to create propulsion. In those cases, they're creating less propulsion because their arms aren't in effective positions. And then with timing, it's when you can just see that the stroke is not fluid, it's not happening at the right time, and they're struggling to get into effective positions. A lot of times, that's going to be a timing problem. So again, in every stroke, there are 3 skills that swimmers need to master. They need to create as little resistance as possible. They need to create as much propulsion as possible. They need to optimize their timing in order to make those first 2 goals happen. So when it comes to developing these skills, there's a certain sequence that tends to be most effective across all strokes to help swimmers learn. And so alignment almost always comes first. The ability to minimize resistance, to be aligned on the surface, to not create a lot of drag is foundational, because without it, swimming becomes very, very difficult. It's very hard to move through the water when swimmers are creating a lot of drag. And so it becomes impossible to learn any other skills because it's just too physically exhausting. And then the second issue with that is that if swimmers aren't in a good body position, they're not stable in the water, they're going to be using their arms and their limbs to try to stabilize themselves. And so if they're doing that, they're not going to be able to create propulsion effectively. And so swimmers have in every stroke in the developmental process, focusing on alignment skills, body position, balance, stability, all that stuff is going to be the foundation for effective swimming. And so what we're trying to do is get them to move as straight through the water as possible. And when you look at elite swimmers, that's what they are doing. And so if you have a swimmer that's moving through the water like this, they're vertical, then they have a problem, and that problem needs to be addressed first. So again, in those situations, they're using their limbs to try to create stability rather than trying to create speed. And then once they do have their alignment in check, then it's a matter of optimizing their timing. So the only way that they're going to be able to create propulsion is if their arms are in the right position at the right time relative to their body. Otherwise, they're going to really struggle to create propulsion. You can see that in butterfly, you see that in breaststroke, you can see that in all the strokes. And so making sure that they have the basic timing down is then the next most important step. Once they're in alignment, once they have solid timing, then we can help swimmers learn how do you use your arms, how do you use your legs to create as much propulsion as possible. Only when they have that foundation, does it become possible to help them create as much propulsion as possible. And so an example, if you have a swimmer who's can't keep their head under the water, they're struggling to breathe, it makes no sense to emphasize what they're doing with their arm, making sure that they're in a great propulsive position, because they can't even get there, because all they're concerned about is making sure that they literally don't drown. And so again, that's the key, is that we have to work on these skills in the right order in order to maximize the impact of any intervention that we might create. All right, so now we'll talk, how does this framework apply to specific strokes? So in freestyle, again, we're trying to help swimmers minimize the resistance that they create. And so there are 3 components to that are absolutely critical. So first, they need to be swimming horizontally level in the water. So they're moving straight through the water. The head, the hips, the legs, everything is in line on the surface. And I'm sure you've seen the opposite, where the head is high, the hips are low, the hips and the legs are completely under the water. Again, that's going to be a very difficult way to move through the water, and it's going to create a lot of drag. It's going to help, and swimmers are going to go slow. Another issue is the lateral alignment. So if I'm swimming straight at you and I'm moving side to side, again, that's going to create a lot of drag. So the shoulders, the hips, everything has to be moving through the straight line. And in many cases, that's going to be a result of arm recoveries that are kind of swinging low, the body to move side to side. It can also be a challenge with breathing. And so every time swimmers lift their head, we're going to slightly disrupt their ability to stay level in the water. And if they're breathing and they're pulling their head to the side, that's also going to disrupt their ability to swim straight through the water. So the breath, it has to be low, it has to be straight, and it also has to be fast. And again, if swimmers are coming off their line, they're moving side to side, they're moving up and down, that's going to make it much, much harder to use the arms, to use the legs in order to create propulsion, because the limbs have to compensate for that up and down or side to side motion. So that's why it's so important to focus on this skill first, especially in freestyle. Oops. So next up, we've got optimizing timing in freestyle. So rotation is really important in freestyle for primarily one really important reason. So in order to get the arm out of the water, swimmers have to rotate. It's really hard to do that while swimming flat. And so by rotating, they can recover the arm. And if they can recover the arm, then they're not going to be swinging the arm side to side. Everything's going to be going straight. And it's going to be much easier to place the arm into the water straight ahead. If they can do that, now they're in a much more effective position to create a lot of propulsion with the arm. So rotation has to happen effectively. It has to happen at the right time. So swimmers are trying to rotate at the most as they begin the recovery of the arm early in the recovery. And on the opposite, they're rotating most as they set up the stroke in the beginning of the pull. That allows them to get a little bit more range of motion. And like we just, with the pull, like we just talked about, it makes it a little bit easier or makes it a lot easier to recover the arms over the water. At the same time, the kick timing is also important to help swimmers control how much they rotate, because we don't want them to rotate all the way side to side. That's slow. It tends to disrupt their body line too. And so the kick helps to prevent them from rotating too much. So again, the timing is really critical, especially of the rotation, because it allows the whole stroke to work effectively. It would be very difficult to swim freestyle without rotation. And if it doesn't happen at the right time, that same issue is still present. It may be that they're rotating a lot, but if they're doing it at the wrong time, they're not going to get the benefit of the rotation. So next up is we've got enhancing propulsion in freestyle. So one thing to think about is that we're trying to use as big of a paddle with our whole arm as possible to move as much water backwards as possible. And so the key power position, it's kind of like a diamond. And so the hand is deep. His hand is deeper than the elbow. The hand is inside the elbow. And so you've got like a diamond that they're pulling with, and that allows them to find a big surface area. So a bigger paddle, they're using the whole arm to move water, and then they're trying to move water backward for as long as possible. And as they do that, they're trying to accelerate the pull to maximize the amount of pressure and propulsion that they create. So again, if you've ever heard of like an early vertical forearm or a high elbow, all those things are different versions of that same idea. Can we get the whole arm facing backwards as early as we can, and then keep it backwards as we pull back, accelerating throughout the whole pull? And so the specific angles don't matter so much. The specific positions don't matter much. It's that big concept. Can swimmers position their arms in a way that allows them to create as much propulsion as possible and then stay in that position for as long as possible while accelerating backwards throughout the pull? So that's freestyle. We'll take a look at backstroke next. And again, it's going to be many of the same concepts that applied in freestyle, because the foundational skills are the same. They're just going to show up a little bit differently. So with backstroke, it's all about being level on the surface. And so one of the mistakes that swimmers will make is they'll either keep their head up way too high, or they'll kind of press their head back into the water, keep their chest really high. And instead, what they kind of want to do is just sort of turn sideways here, is they'll kind of want to just melt into the water a little bit. And that allows them to create a position where they're level, they're not arching the back, which ultimately causes the hips to sink and the legs to sink, and they're staying right at the surface. If they can do that, they don't have to use their arms and legs to try to create stability, to try to keep their position stable. Instead, they can use their arms and legs to create propulsion. And because they're not creating a lot of drag, swimming is easier and it's going to be faster as well. So like in freestyle, backstrokers run or can potentially swim side to side with a lot of movement. And that's another thing that we want to avoid. So again, if they're moving side to side, one, it's going to be harder to get the arm in position to create propulsion effectively, but just as importantly, it's going to create a lot more drag. And so as with freestyle, those side to side motions are often the result of poor recoveries over the water. And so what we're looking for is, again, a super straight recovery, a super straight entry. So rather than entering here or behind the head or something like that, it's kind of right over the shoulder, maybe slightly out to the side, maybe slightly behind the shoulder, but again, very close to straight up overhead. That reduces the amount of side to side motion that's going to happen as a result of those arm recoveries. That means the arms are going to be in position to create propulsion. And just as importantly, it's going to prevent swimmers from moving side to side when they execute their stroke, because they don't have that torque that's pulling them around. So, all right, optimizing timing. So, like with freestyle, it's all about the rotation, because when the arms are moving opposite, swimmers need to rotate in order to get the arms in the right position. So the most important aspect of rotation timing in backstroke is that when the hand enters, there's rotation to that same side. So if you sit here and you put your arms out to the side and you don't rotate, it's very difficult to get the arm back behind the body. It doesn't want to go there. There isn't the range of motion that would be otherwise necessary in the shoulder and the upper body. And so the only way to get into an effective pulling position is to rotate back to that side under the water. That allows swimmers to get the arm in position in order to create propulsion. If that rotation doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen at the right time, it's going to be much harder to execute an effective pull. And then when swimmers do pull, you will hear a lot that the rotation powers the pull and stuff like that. In backstroke, swimmers have to not rotate as they pull. And the reason is, again, if swimmers have to rotate in order to get into position, they have to stay rotated in order to stay in that position as they pull. If they rotate away as they pull, they're going to struggle to maintain an effective propulsive position, and that means they're going to go slow. So again, swimmers have to rotate as they enter the water so that they can get into an effective pulling position. They have to stay rotated as they pull. And then at the end of the pull, they have to very quickly switch to the other side, because then that allows them to transition from one stroke to the other in as little time as possible. And obviously, they can't be rotated to the same side at the same time. And so that rotation has to happen really fast so they can switch over to the other side in order to get the other arm in position to create as much propulsion as possible. So in backstroke, in terms of creating propulsion with the arms, it's the same idea as a freestyle pull. The difference is it happens on the back. And so swimmers are going to try, when their hand goes in, they need to turn the arm so that the whole forearm is facing backwards. That gives them a much bigger paddle. And when they can do that early in the stroke up near their head, they're going to be able to stay in that position for a much longer period of time. And so it's kind of like an inverted high elbow. The elbow is actually going to be deep. The hand's going to be closer to the surface, but everything is straight up and down. Again, from that position, they're going to accelerate the arm backwards, staying in that position and holding it throughout. That's going to help them move as much water as possible, which is going to help them execute those skills as quickly as possible. Of course, just like in freestyle, the kick has to be there as well. And a tight, fast, strong kick is going to help swimmers create as much propulsion as possible. It's going to help create stability in the stroke, and that's going to help power them down the pool. So just like in freestyle, swimmers have to minimize the amount of resistance they create. They have to stay level in the water. They have to not move side to side. They have to get their rotation timing down in order to allow the arms to be used as effectively as possible. They have to create as much propulsion with the arm by getting it the whole arm facing backward as early as possible, staying in that position for as long as possible, and accelerating throughout the pull. Next up, we've got breaststroke. So breaststroke is going to be a little bit different from freestyle and backstroke for kind of two reasons. One, the kick is going to be pretty different. and then instead of rotating side to side, swimmers are going to rotate up and down. They're going to undulate. So principles are still the same. The application of those principles is going to be a little bit different. So as swimmers move through the water, they have to get into a line every single stroke. And so after they take the pull, after they breathe, after they kick, they've got to be streamlined on the surface every single time. And then as they move through the stroke cycle, they're trying to leave that streamlined position as little as possible. So they've got to breathe, they've got to come up, but rather than just popping straight up, they want to be thinking about breathing forwards so that they don't create as much drag, the hips don't drop quite as much, and everything is moving forward rather than, again, up and down, because the more up and down there is, the more drag they're going to create and the slower they're going to go and the more difficult it's going to be. So another key aspect of minimizing the amount of drag that they create, minimizing the resistance they create, is when they do take that breath, they've got to be aggressive, getting forwards, getting the arms forward as much as possible. And so what you'll see with a lot of swimmers, even some pretty good ones, but especially ones that are earlier in their swimming journey, they take that breath, their hands get stuck under their body. And at this point, they're creating a lot of drag because they're moving through the water like this. They're creating no propulsion with their arms. They're creating no propulsion with their legs. And so they're going to, in some cases, literally almost come to a stop. Even if you can't see it, you can pick that up sometimes with some, speed metrics with some technology. So they've got to get out of that position as quickly as they can so that they can get back in line as quickly as they can so they can start the next stroke and be effective without creating a ton of drag. And so learning to minimize drag. So breaststroke is often thought of as a power stroke, but in many cases, it's all about keeping drag as little as possible because there are so many opportunities to create a lot of drag. Swimmers have to avoid them as much as they can, and the ones that avoid them better tend to swim faster. So with breaststroke timing, one of the key ways to keep resistance low is to optimize the timing in breaststroke. And so it can be very difficult. It can seem very difficult. A lot of swimmers struggle with it, especially when they try to go fast. However, the principles, and it can be difficult for some to learn, the principles ultimately remain the same. Swimmers have to separate their arms and the legs and the propulsion they create with the arms and the legs. And so they want to pull when their legs are straight behind the body. Then right after they pull, they need to quickly get the arms back in front so that they're streamlined in front of the body, and that's when they kick. So it's the alternation between the pull and the kick. And when swimmers do pull, their legs should be in streamline. And when they do kick, their arms should be in streamline. And the better swimmers can do that, and the tighter they can make those gaps, the more propulsion they will create, the less drag they'll create, and ultimately the faster they will swim. And so the timing or those principles apply whether swimmers are going a 50-meter race or a 200-meter race. What happens is that there tends to be a little bit more separation between the arms and the legs over longer distances, and the separation between the arms and the legs is much, much shorter over shorter distances. So it could be like pull, kick in a 200, where it's like pull, kick, pull, kick, pull, kick, pull, kick in a 100 or a 50, where the stroke rates need to be a lot faster, so that separation becomes a lot smaller. It's very, very difficult to swim fast breaststroke if swimmers can't develop effective timing. So they've got to get in, they got to get to and stay in good lines. Then they got to optimize the timing, and then it becomes a matter of improving propulsion, and that's what we'll talk about next. So again, the principles remain the same. And so even if it looks very different in breaststroke, the concepts are the same. And so we'll start kind of with the kick. I've got the arms here forward. So swimmers need to set up their kick in a way that allows them to turn the foot out, turn the shin out, and then kick back from that position. So the more they can turn everything out, that means they're going to have a bigger surface area to move water with. They'll have a bigger paddle, a bigger fin, whatever you want to call it. And then from there, it's about kicking back. And so one of the mistakes is talking about kicking around or all that stuff. The breaststroke kick is a backward kick. That is how swimmers move forward. And so another way to think about it, it's a vertical jump with the feet turned out. And so some swimmers, because they have different ranges of motion in the legs, the hips, the knees, the ankles, all that stuff, they may have to be a little bit narrower. They may feel a little bit better, a little wider. That's a very individual thing. But the concepts, the principles remain the same across all swimmers. They've got to get everything turned out. They've got to keep the feet outside the knees. And then from there, they're going to kick straight back. And obviously at the end, everything's going to come together, but they're not trying to make it come together. It just happens as a natural result of kicking backwards. And so the arms, a similar concept. So what swimmers need to do is they start with the hands together. They need to slide them out so that they can get the arms or the hands down and the elbows up. And because swimmers can't rotate in breaststroke because both arms are happening at the same time, they tend to have to go a little bit wider to set up that stroke to get everything facing backwards than they do in freestyle. And so from that position, then it's just a matter of pulling back and then squeezing in. And that, again, that backward motion drives them forward. So it's all about, can they get the arms positioned backwards so that the hands are down, the elbows are up. That allows them to have most of the arm facing backwards. And then from there, they're pulling back and into the body to send themselves forward. So it's not so much about sculling. It's about getting into positions, pulling from those positions, and like the other strokes, setting the arm up so a big surface area is used, and then pulling back, accelerating back to accelerate themselves forward. So just like any other strokes, even though it looks different, it's still the same concepts, it's still the same principles. They've got to minimize resistance. Again, swimming level through the water, just like in freestyle and backstroke. They've got to optimize the timing, getting the arms and the legs working at the right time. And then with propulsion, can they get a big surface area using as much of their leg or their arm as possible and accelerating that back to accelerate themselves forward. So next up, we've got butterfly. So as with breaststroke, rather than rotating side to side, because both arms are being used at the same time, swimmers are going to rotate up and down in order to basically get the arms out of the water, which we'll talk a little bit about next when we talk about optimizing timing. And so again, well, undulation is required to recover the arms. So in freestyle, swimmers are on the surface. They can't get their arm behind their body unless they rotate. If swimmers can't rotate in butterfly because they have to get both arms out of the water, the only thing to do is to lift up, and that gives them the space to recover the arms over the water. So they need to undulate enough. They need to move up and down enough to get the arms over the water. If they don't, they'll create a ton of drag, trying to recover the arms through the water. But if they undulate too much, it will allow them to recover the arms maybe a little bit easier. But if they come up a lot, the hips are going to go down a lot, and now they're creating a lot of drag by moving through the water. And especially with younger swimmers, they're really struggling to get their arms out of the water. So they do anything and everything they can, and they tend to come up pretty high because they don't want to get their arms caught. So that can be effective when they're first learning, but over time, they need to learn to flatten that out because, again, they're trying to go as level as the water, as level through the water as possible. They have to come up a little bit to recover the arms, but they don't want to come up any more than that because, again, that's just going to create more drag. Similarly, obviously, they can't breathe to the side, although some swimmers try to do it, but even when they do, they still lift up in order to make that happen. So they're not trying to lift up as high as they can to guarantee they get this monster breath. They're coming up just enough in order to get air. So they're trying to breathe as low as they can. They're trying to breathe as fast as they can because the longer they stay up in that position, the more drag they're going to create, the slower they're going to swim. And so again, they need to undulate, they need to breathe in order to make the stroke work, but they're trying to do as little as necessary in order to keep it as tight as possible, to keep drag as low as possible. So when it comes to timing, we just talked about how the the importance of undulation is to allow the arms to recover over the water. And so it obviously matters that swimmers start to undulate as they get the arms over the water, or excuse me, it's important that they have elevated the body so that when the arms are ready to recover, they have the space to do that and they're up enough already. And then there are two other components of timing that are really, really important. And they both center on kick timing. So after swimmers breathe, after they recover the arms, they're going to be up elevated. And again, that's going to drop the hips a little bit. Excuse me. So as the hands enter, if swimmers can kick, that's going to get the hips up in the water, and that's going to get them level again as they enter the water. And so the kick timing is really, really important because it allows swimmers to minimize the drag that they create after the arm recovery by getting the hips back up to the water or back up to the surface. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of swimmers that just end up swimming butterfly like this. In many cases, they're not executing that effective kick upon entry that allows them to reestablish a horizontal body position on the surface. And if they can't do that, they're really going to struggle in order to minimize the drag they create. And that will make butterfly much more difficult and a lot slower. As we just talked about, the other issue with, or the other important timing piece of the kick is kicking when the hands are finishing the stroke right as they exit the water. So as we talked about, swimmers have to lift up a little bit in order to recover the arms, but lifting up drops the hips down. So if swimmers kick as the hands exit the water, again, the hips are going to be want to be moving down. That lifts the hips up, but because the upper body's up, it lifts the whole body up, and that allows for those arms to swing right over the surface. So a lot of swimmers, especially younger swimmers that struggle with their arm recoveries, it's because they're not doing a good job of kicking when the hands exit, which allows the arms to be up at the surface of the water, which allows them to flow easily over the water. So the kick timing is really, really important for helping swimmers shift their body position up and down at the right time. And so if they get a strong kick, but it happens when they don't need it, then it's not going to happen when they do need it. And so that's another reason why timing is so critical. And when you see really fast butterflies that make it look easy, it's because they have the timing. And so everything is happening at the right time in the right way. And it is easier because they're doing things that need to happen when they need to happen. And then in contrast, when swimmers don't get the timing right, it can be very difficult because the right thing isn't happening at the right time, and they have to use muscle or they have to force things in order to get it to happen. So kicking upon entry repositions the body to eliminate drag after the recovery. Kicking upon exit helps shift the body position up so the arms can recover smoothly. And in both cases, that creates less drag. It allows swimmers to swim with a lot less effort and a lot more speed. So if we've got the kick, or excuse me, the propulsion. So again, as with the other strokes, swimmers can create propulsion with their arms, they can create propulsion with their legs, and they do so in very similar ways. So with the arms, they're going to kind of enter a little bit wider, like we talked about with breaststroke. Because there's no rotation in butterfly, swimmers are going to have to be a little bit wider to get the hands down, the elbows up, and the arm facing backwards. And when they can do that, they're going to have a much bigger surface area. They're going to have a much bigger paddle to pull with rather than just using their arms. They've got the whole forearm set up and moving backwards. Then they need to hold that position from the front of the stroke all the way to the back of the stroke, and they need to accelerate through that pull. Accelerating through the pull will help them create a lot of propulsion, but it also helps them get the hand speed necessary to swing those arms over the water, which again is going to be really, really, really important. The kick in butterfly especially does help create a lot of propulsion. And so swimmers, again, need to be able to use that whole foot, move water backwards, move water down too, because that helps them lift the hips up in the water. And what's important to consider with butterfly is that we talked about one kick is happening after the recovery. And so the body position is pretty level in the water. And then the other kick is happening as swimmers recover the arms as they breathe. And that's creating a much more vertical position in the water. And so those kicks are not the same. And so from a training standpoint, it can be helpful to do some kicking where the head stays up, some kicking where the head stays down. And that ensures that both kicks are adequately developed in order to create as much propulsion as possible. So the pull is going to be really, really important. It requires a lot of force, but if swimmers execute their timing effectively, like we talked about in the previous slide, that makes it easier to make that happen. What really matters, big surface area, big range of motion, lots of propulsion. Okay, so our last stroke is underwater kicking, and there are three similar skills that are really important. So first, a lot of swimmers can create a lot of drag because they have no control of their upper body. They're just kind of moving all over the place. So effective underwater kicking starts with a stable platform, a stable upper body, a stable hands. It's not that they don't move at all, but they have to be swimmers have to be in control over what's happening. So again, hands, head, upper body control. That doesn't mean the absence of movement, but again, they need to be able to control that movement rather than just having it flop all around. And so when they do have that control, they can create that wave, they can create that undulation that happens from the top of the body. It travels down the body, and as it does, it gets bigger and faster. And while a lot of attention is given to what's happening with the legs, and that is important, as we'll talk about shortly, the legs do deliver the necessary force to the water that helps swimmers go fast. That where that power comes from is the whole body. And so when the undulation gets bigger and faster as it travels down the body, that force can be delivered, is ultimately delivered by the legs rather than created by the legs. And so if swimmers can't create a stable platform, they're going to create more drag. They're also going to be unable to generate that wave of propulsion. And if they can't, or wave of undulation, excuse me, and if that wave can't travel down the body, then ultimately swimmers aren't going to be able to deliver as much force to the water as they need. So underwater kicking is not just about kicking, it's about creating stability, creating undulation, and helping that travel down the body so swimmers can go as fast as possible. So next up, we've got propulsion. And so swimmers need to be able to hold water with the feet, just like they do with the hands. And if they can't, they're not going to really go anywhere. And so a key aspect of that is kicking through the center line. So they're making sure that if this is their body line, they're kicking in front of that position every time. And that ensures that they're using a full range of motion. They also need to create propulsion in both directions. They need to kick fast in both directions. And so most swimmers are going to focus on kicking the feet forward in front of the body. And that's really important. They also have to be really good at kicking fast behind the body. And so interestingly enough, one of the most important factors, as determined by some research in fast underwater kicking, is the kick speed that's moving behind the body. So the part that swimmers tend not to focus on actually is the part that tends to be most related to fast underwater kicking. And so swimmers have to be able to kick forward and backwards fast. And while the knees will bend on the forward kick, they need to actually kick the arm pretty straight on the up kick. And that allows them to create a whipping action to take advantage of the undulation wave that's happening with the upper body. And that allows them to create the most speed. So swimmers have to be able to hold water. They have to be able to take advantage of the wave of undulation that's created with underwater kicking. And they have to be able to kick effectively in both directions, which ultimately allows them to create the most speed they can under the water. And then finally, we've got, just like with the other strokes, swimmers have to create as little drag as possible, as little resistance as possible under the surface of the water. And so one of the reasons that underwater kicking is so fast, even though swimmers aren't using their arms, is because there is so little drag, relatively speaking, under the water as compared to on the surface. And so if swimmers are moving through the water and they've got this crooked boat that's kind of, their shape is really, crooked, like I said, that's going to create a lot more drag. And even if they're kicking effectively, they're not going to be able to create much speed. So that all starts with coming off the wall, really stacked up. So they're in a straight line. They're not bent or out of shape like that. Everything's super straight. And then from there, they're able to maintain that position and then starting to undulate from there. And so we want to avoid a really arched spine, a really rounded spine, all those positions that, again, they're not moving straight, they're moving kind of crooked through the water, which is going to create more drag. And then in terms of how much undulation there should be, it can be different for each swimmer. The answer, which is not always helpful, is enough. It should be enough undulation to allow them to create propulsion, but not too much that they create too much drag. And that's something that ultimately has to be determined with some experimentation and practice. But the concept is really important. They need to undulate in order to create propulsion, but the more undulation they create, the more resistance they create, and they don't necessarily create more propulsion. So being tight, finding the right amount is what's really, really key. And again, it comes back to the timing of the undulation. It comes back to creating propulsion with the legs, starting from that undulation and then working in both directions, and then maintaining a position that creates as little drag as possible. So again, even though underwater kicking looks very different than breaststroke, it's still the same principles, it's still the same concepts, and the same tools are ultimately effective for helping swimmers learn those skills. So when it comes to applying these ideas to your coaching, here's what to look for first. So start with alignment errors. Are they moving straight through the water? Are they moving side to side? Is it up and down? Are they moving horizontally? Or are they moving horizontally, but their body position is kind of vertical? Those are all issues that need to be addressed. And so what you're looking for, can I help them go straighter through the water? The straighter through the water they swim, the faster they're going to swim. Then the next thing is to look at timing. Is the right thing happening at the right time? Is the rotation timing effective? Is the undulation timing effective? Is the arm and leg timing effective? That needs to be cleaned up next, because if it's not, it's very difficult to create as much propulsion as possible. Then once those things are, you've kind of made those, you've kind of checked those things out, how are their propulsive skills? Are they getting into positions where they're using big surface areas to move a lot of water backwards, or are they kind of going side to side? Are they not staying in those positions? Are they not accelerating through those positions? All those different aspects of creating propulsion are going to be really, really important. And so looking for those becomes the final step to check out. Oops, I forgot to switch the slide. Sorry about that. So that was what I was talking about at that point. So again, starting alignment errors, then timing errors, and then propulsion errors. And ultimately, that's going to be the most important things to really evaluate, to check for, and to look for. And so again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of information out there. There are a lot of resources that can be really valuable. And so when you're evaluating advice, it can be really helpful to bring it back to the simple principles. So if someone is advocating for a certain skill, it's just thinking, does that help swimmers reduce resistance? Or does it help swimmers improve their timing? Or does it increase the amount of propulsion that swimmers are creating? If the answer is no, or the answer is not really, then it's probably not advice that you want to take. But if the answer is yes, and the answer is definitely yes, then that is advice that can be really useful. And so by using these principles, it can become a lot easier to kind of navigate effective coaching advice, effective skill development advice, or technique advice, because you have a foundational principle of what really matters. Swimmers have to create as little drag as possible. They have to create as much propulsion as possible, and they have to do the right thing at the right time in order to make it happen. So, as a summary, the same principles apply in every stroke and during underwaters. It's about alignment, it's about propulsion, it's about timing. And so those principles, those concepts are very simple. Applying them in practice, helping swimmers learn those principles, understand those principles, and use them to create effective skills is not easy. But if you start with the right principles, the right concepts, the process becomes a lot smoother, the process becomes a lot clearer, and the process becomes a lot more effective. So again, having those principles is foundational, is key, and you can use them to evaluate and to guide all of the technical advice that you apply across any stroke and any skill because the principles are the same no matter what the context is. So that is it for everything. We can happy to tackle questions at this point.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. You really make it easy to understand and sort of stress test the coaching.
Cool.
Hey, tell us about your recent coaching of the coaches. You know, how do you help people in the swim community, you know, with your business?
Yeah, sure. So kind of two ways is one is more on like a club level. It's figuring out how to does the team, does the coach, or does the club integrate these kind of concepts so that swimmers are learning the right skills at the right time in the right way, and they're doing so consistently. Because just because you're aware of this information or you know it doesn't mean that the athletes are necessarily going to be exposed to it. And especially when life gets busy, all those things, it can be very difficult to ensure that the important stuff is addressed, again, from day one, from when they first come to the pool at age 6, and then all the way up maybe until their final age group experience at age 18. Then secondly, also work kind of more specifically with coaches. And so hey, I have this specific problem that I'm trying to solve. How do we go about doing that? And so then it's a matter of identifying the what's the real problem? What are the solutions to address those problems? And then how do we apply those into actual practice and training settings? Because again, if it's just an idea, if it's not happening, if it's not becoming reality, then it doesn't really matter.
So give us an idea of some of the big problems that you look for, or the red flags that are happening all too often out in the swim teams.
Yeah. So one of them is like they just don't work on any of this stuff, and so I think that's a huge issue, is that there's no kind of intentional plan. And so coaches will see something that's like, hey, Johnny's doing this or Susie's doing this, and they'll say something to them, but there's no like structured progression as to how those issues are going to be addressed before they even like show up. And so I think that's a foundational thing. Another thing is that a lot of coaches do a pretty good job with planning their training in terms of like, this day is going to be this type of training, this day is going to be this type of training. This month we're going to focus on this, and then next month we're going to focus on that. Whereas they do none of that with the skills, and it's just as important or just as and it's also just as challenging to develop skills over time. And so that same level of detail, that same level of planning needs to happen regularly, because if it doesn't happen like that, those skills aren't going to change. And so an example that's pretty obvious is you'll see some teams that are pretty good at underwater kicking, and then you'll see some teams that none of the kids are good at underwater kicking. And generally speaking, that doesn't happen by chance. And so the teams that do a good job with that have created some sort of plan, some sort of progression, some sort of approach to ensure that those skills are being developed every day. And the other teams that don't do that. And so you clearly see the results of that, because that's something that, everybody swims freestyle. And so someone's going to, they're going to have good kids that are good at freestyle no matter what, but the underwater kicking is something that has to be a lot more intentional. And that same approach can be applied to all the strokes, all the skills, and you get a lot more progress and a lot better performances that way.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. And do you think, like in a bigger team, it's the age group coach or the site specific coach that's doing more of the influence, or is it more of the
depends.
team culture?
Yeah. Well, it depends. So you may have a head coach or a board of, like, however the club is set up, that, we'll call it leadership, that basically says this is how we have to do things. And so from the ground up, I mean, this is the ideal situation. From the ground up, whatever those important things are, they're developed from day one, in age appropriate ways. So like the 8-year-olds are working on it, the 12-year-olds are working on it, the 16-year-olds are working on it, but it shows up in different ways because, they're at different levels. It could be they just had, the the coach that works in the 9 and 10-year-olds was just all about it and did it every day, and so they learned those things and they kind of just carried them through. It could be, again, like a certain site tends to do that with bigger teams, but ideally it's, again, it kind of comes from the top, and it's like, it's just like a business. McDonald's is saying, you got to cook the fries this way, you got to make the burgers this way, and so wherever you go in the world, you order a burger and it's going to be pretty similar. And so that type of thinking is what's going to be most effective. Of course, you have really exceptional individuals that take it upon themselves to make those things happen. And so in some cases, that's also what the result is, or why you see those skills show up like that.
Then I had one more question, and maybe other people
Yeah.
could ask them. So in the communities, there's a revolving door of sorts that there are new kids coming onto the team, and then there are the kids that have been on the team for 3, 4, 5 years. How do you teach these skills to some people that might not have been around last month?
Right. Right.
Do you have any ideas or tips for that?
Yeah. So one, that's always going to be a challenge, and you can't always make up for lost time, and so that is what it is. If someone's been working on something for 5 years, someone else can't come in and learn that in a week. That being said, if there's a very structured approach to consistently working on those things over and over and over again, and you're meeting kids where they're at, they're going to start getting exposure to that stuff. And when they see everyone else around them doing a really great job with that and really valuing that, that tends to accelerate their progress. So whenever, again, you see, it's kind of like the 4-minute mile phenomenon, where a guy ran 4 minutes for the first time, and now everyone can do it. When people see it around them, that starts to happen. But the most important thing is, again, consistently working on the stuff that matters. And even if the kids that didn't get exposed to that, if they start working on those things that consistently matter and doing it consistently, they may not be able to make up the gap entirely, but they will make up a large part of that gap because they start working on those things with intention, whereas they weren't doing that before. And so in many cases, they have a lot more room for improvement because they haven't been doing that. But I think, to your point, that's why it's really important to have kind of this plan for this. So if someone comes in, they don't have those things, there is an avenue for them to catch up because they are consistently working on that stuff. And again, all of it, no matter where they're at, they got to keep working on the same things. It's just at a higher level of difficulty.
Well, thanks a lot for your time.
Absolutely.
You're always, doing a great job with leading the other coaches.
Thanks.
Dennis,
Appreciate it,
do you
Mark.
have anything to ask or say?
Hey guys, Coach, thank you so much. Sorry, but I'm not feeling well. Okay.
No worries. Hope you feel better.
Not feeling well because I haven't slept for 22 hours already. Now, coaches, if you wanted to upgrade your level of certificate, the lowest level of certificate is a certificate of attendance. Now, if you wanted to make it certificate of knowledge, you need to submit an essay, what you learned today. Okay, send it outright. I'm giving you 2 hours to give 200 words minimum to give what you learned about this seminar today. Okay, you need to itemize each stroke. Okay, if you don't have the right words to say it, each stroke which is not correct will be minus 25%. Okay, sorry. Okay, so when you deal with the upgrading your knowledge, be sure that you are correct. Okay, so for short, if you're teaching a kid or teaching a class, if you're not correct, do not utter words. Okay, because you will destroy your reputation. Okay, somebody before as a national coach, was emphasizing that breaststroke is allowed for doing is a technique of doing delayed kicking. Wow, how can you dunk a basketball court with a delayed jumping? See, these are things that if you are not perfectly or close to perfect on explaining, please uh, double check knowledge or information about the what you're saying. Okay, it's so humiliating for a coach which doesn't know how to explain properly the stroke mechanics. Okay, that is why I asked Coach Andrew, okay, to explain. It's not just coming from me. Okay, for us, UCSSC 2026, we wanted a high standards on coaching. Sorry, I apologize on saying this. Okay, but if you teach kids, teach the proper way. Don't ever teach, guys. If you're doubting yourself, don't push it. You need to learn more. Coach, so thank you so much for your time for today, and we would like to say thank you. We don't have the right words to say. Please, guys, give some hearts, 5 hearts to Coach Andrew Scheaff. Okay, please. Okay, and for those coming from different countries, thank you for attending. Coach Mark, any more? Any more to add?
No, I think we should be done, and everybody stay safe. I'll play some content on the way out that you people can check out. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks again, everybody, for attending.
Take care.
Coach Andrew, thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, let's do this public service announcement again. It's just a minute, and then afterward we'll talk about little team culture on the way out. So thanks for attending.
Hi, I'm Michael Phelps, and as you know, I love to swim. Swimming is a life-saving skill, but it's important to be careful around water, even if you're a great swimmer. Never swim alone, and never hold your breath for an extended amount of time. Doing so can cause you to faint. It's what happened to my friend Chandler.
I was actually pronounced dead in shallow water after taking an underwater swim challenge in a pool. Vacationing with my family, it was my competitive self that hyperventilated so I could hold my breath more easily.
But Chandler never emerged from underwater. When they finally realized something was very wrong, he was already gone. If not for the 2 doctors who happened to be by the pool, he would be.
Those doctors never stopped CPR, and after 5 minutes, they got a heartbeat and a pulse. My family and wife had to experience this horror for no good reason. Most shallow water blackout victims don't make it. Me being here is a miracle.
Shallow water blackout is 94% lethal and 100% preventable. So please don't hold your breath for extended amounts of time.
If it happened to me, it could happen to anyone.
And then the other week, we had a seminar on building team culture. The presenter was from Switzerland, a basketball coach, but we've synthesized, and here are some of the highlights thanks to Notebook LM.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what it takes to build a winning team culture. We're going to do this by diving into the playbook of an elite international coach, Harkai Hunor. And look, this isn't just about X's and O's. It's about building the very foundation of success for any team in any sport. So let's just start with this idea because it really flips everything you think you know on its head. This idea that chasing results, and only results, can actually poison the well. It can kill the very development that leads to sustainable success. A real winning culture, it's built on growth, not just the final score. So here's our game plan. We're going to break down 5 key areas. We'll start with the foundation on the court. Then we'll look at why winning off the court matters so much. After that, it's all about the player, the art of adapting on the fly, and we'll wrap up with the biggest rule of all, the coach has to be the #1 example. Okay, everything, and I mean everything, starts right here, on the court, in the pool, out on the field. You see, a strong culture isn't built on some rah-rah motivational speech. It's forged in the fire of daily discipline and really clear principles that everyone understands. Think of this right here as the architectural blueprint for your team. These 7 pillars, they're the non-negotiables. From showing up every single day to leading by example, each one is like a load-bearing wall. You pull one out, and the whole thing can come crashing down. Let's break that down a bit. First up, and this is the big one, consistency. If your athletes aren't there, you can't build a thing. Simple as that. Your rules and expectations, they have to be crystal clear from day one, not made up as you go. And yeah, you demand maximum effort, but you also have to be smart enough to know that you can't talk to every single athlete the exact same way. And this quote, this just nails the principle of fairness. Look, your credibility as a coach is built on what you do in practice. You just can't scream at a player to do something in the heat of a game that you haven't taught them, drilled them on, and prepared them for. It's not fair. It destroys trust. Now, especially in today's world, the final whistle doesn't mean the work is done. Not even close. If you want to build a team that's truly connected and resilient, you have to win the game off the court too. Honestly, this has become just as important as drawing up the right play. A modern coach's job description has gotten a lot bigger. You're not just a coach, you're kind of a community manager. That means you're organizing team-building events, you're using social media to praise your players, and you're consciously building an atmosphere where your athletes can actually connect as human beings. You know, Coach Hunter has this perfect story that shows you exactly what this means. He realized that one of his teams wasn't super self-motivated, so he knew he had to build that motivation by creating bonds, by creating shared memories. And that led to a pretty unforgettable day on a river. So, the coach's boat, paddling in perfect rhythm, just glides to an easy win. Meanwhile, the other boats are pure chaos. People are splashing, they're spinning in circles, boats are flipping over. The lesson about teamwork was pretty obvious, right? But the real magic was the shared laughter. That's the glue that turned them into a real team. And that brings us right back to the individual player. Because a team culture, no matter how great, only works if every single person on that team feels like they're getting better. Your job as a coach is to develop the person, and that takes a serious understanding of psychology. Okay, so think about it. When you take over a new team, you can't just walk in and demand blind trust. It doesn't work that way. The strategy is to go for quick, short-term wins. Show a player you can make them just a little bit better fast. That earns you their trust. And that trust, that's the currency you spend to invest in their long-term development. So here's a classic coaching nightmare. It's the playoffs, you're the underdog, you just lost game 1 at home, and your team is convinced they can't win. They're defeated. What do? Well, this is where the coach becomes a psychologist. So the coach came up with this brilliant plan. He had the team buy the most expensive, fancy protein powder on the market. Then he created this super professional, elaborate ritual around it. When to take it, how much to take. He made it feel like they had a secret weapon, a scientific edge nobody else had. Look, the protein itself did absolutely nothing in 3 days. But the belief did everything. The players felt like the team was investing in them, they felt like they had an advantage, and they walked into that next game with a totally different energy. They won. The trick worked. You can have the most brilliant system in the world, but if you try to force it rigidly on every team in every situation, it's going to fail. The absolute best coaches are chameleons. They can adapt their philosophy, their communication, everything to fit the world around them. And this adaptation happens on so many different levels. First, you have to adapt to the players you actually have, not the ones you wish you had. Then you adapt to the league, to the other coaches, and maybe the trickiest one of all, you have to adapt to the local culture you're working in. When you show up in a new town, you need to scout the city just like you'd scout an opponent. Learn its history. Understand how people there think. And trust me, if you make an effort to learn even just a few words of the local language, the amount of respect you gain is massive. It shows you actually care. And that brings us to the final, and without a doubt, the most important piece of this whole playbook. A coach doesn't just install a culture. The coach is the culture. Every single thing you do is being watched, and it sets the standard for everyone else. You see this mistake all the time, especially with young coaches. They try to be friends with their players. But here's the thing. Being liked and being respected are not the same thing. Players might hang out with a friend, but they will follow a leader into a war. And it's respect that builds a leader's authority. And believe me, your players notice everything. How you dress, how you talk about your family, what you read. Coach Hunter talks about playing a lot of chess. When his players see that, it reinforces the idea that he's a strategist, a thinker. Your entire life is the lesson plan. Because at the end of the day, all your technical knowledge will only get you so far. Real influence is built on character. Your athletes have to see that you have integrity, that you have discipline. That's what earns real, lasting respect. So it all really boils down to this one last question. Are you building players, or are you just building plays? Because focusing on plays, yeah, that might win you a couple of games. But focusing on building better people, better leaders, and better teammates, that's how you create a culture of excellence that lasts a lifetime.
This was the presentation from Coach. It's available in its full replay at wasu.org. So if you want to sort of think about and build upon some of the ideas in his talk, check it out. There was an infographic as well. So sometime we'll try to get
Thank you,
Andrew's.
Coach, for the information.
Sure. We'll get Andrew's replay up on the web soon. And also, we had a great presentation 2 days ago from a Canadian coach. Pierre Lefontaine gave a talk. It was a lot of great coach speak items, and that replay will come online too.
All right. Yeah. Coach, can I have a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah, I see your playing advertisement last night about the U.S. United States lifeguard, something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Was it a course or something like we can achieve worldwide, or just exclusively for the USA? How does the organization goes? Like in terms of membership of, yeah.
Yeah. So what I posted was a recruiting video that the U.S. Life Saving Association did. Yeah, I just saw it was about a 2-minute video. It was really nice. And I put it inside the podcast that I do called Heavy or Not. And I'll post that URL here. But you would have to research that organization. I know that there are some worldwide lifeguard initiatives, but this was just sort of a feel good. Hey, let's get people to come out and become lifeguards.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have anything more specific on that. And it had a lot to do with the beach things too. So the US I would just Google it, United States Lifeguard Association.
That's all right, Coach. Thank you. Yeah.
Sure. There it is. I'll put that usla.org was their organization. I'll put that in the chat. And then I'll also get the Facebook, the link to the YouTube that had the Heavy or Not. There it is. I think we played that the other day. It's in the chat.
Thank you for the information, Coach.
Sure.
Oh, there you go, the YouTube. Is there any plans for like have presentations also for water safety? Like lifeguarding stuff for in the near future?
Yeah, that's a good one. We could put that on our list. I know that there's some open water, coaching and open water swimming things that are coming. And we've done a few in the past. The thing that I would try to do is there's a search bar, and I'll make it a little more prominent at wasu.org. But we haven't really done a lot of the really basic water safety stuff. So in the search bar at the bottom of the page, you could do safety, see what comes up. I've talked a lot about that in my heavy or not areas. There's another link. So let me share my screen.
Oh.
So on our wasu.org page, go way to the bottom. There's this little search bar.
Mm-hmm.
And in here, you got safety, do a search.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll maybe, it just showed me something. I didn't spell safety right. Let's do safe.
Oh, there. Yeah.
So there's a few things
So
here.
Yeah, plenty.
Here's some drowning prevention and water safety awareness. This is a heavy or not. This is my podcast number 38.
Mm-hmm.
Drowning. This is the one. This is the one we were talking about.
Mm.
Well, no, this is not the lifeguarding one, but it's another one about water. All right. Well, I think we should go search that site. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure, Coach. Yeah, thanks.
For being
I'll
here.
search that one up.
Yeah, wasu.org. At the bottom is a search engine. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
Everybody's welcome. Take care.
Thank
I'm
you,
gonna
Coach.
exit the meeting.
Good night.